Your time at Oxford.
Yeah. Well, I remember taking a suitcase and the clothes I stood in at the time, and boarding a train from, I think it must have been Birkenhead, over the river to Oxford, which was on the Western Line. And getting there, it was Erev Shmini Atzeret, I think. I know it was Chol Hamoed Sukkot. And anyway, I got to the college. I was shown where my rooms were going to be for a year, and then I decided to try and find, you know, where the Jews were, what's going on. It's already Erev Shmini Atzeret. I found my way to the shul, and sure enough, there was a whole crowd of young men and one or two women. And that's how it started off. It became involved. And there were a number of us who'd been national servicemen, mainly in the RAF, a few in the army, one or two maybe in the navy. And you know, probably only the one, Jack Rosenthal, the only one in the navy. And so I got involved, and then I became canteen manager and shul, whatever they called it, warden, synagogue warden, which was shamas. And I was involved in the Israel group, which is the Zionist wing of the Jewish things, separate from the Jewish Student Society. Some people like me join both, and others people choose one or the other. So the routine was that you had rooms for a year at least in college, which meant there were staircases in different wings. Each staircase, each floor there was another room. Some of the more palatial ones were used by dons. Don is the term in Oxford and Cambridge for a teacher, member of the academic staff. And others were people, if you were a scholar, that is to say you had the top award, you wore a big gown. Next thing was an exhibitioner, which was a slightly smaller gown. And the rest of us were commoners, gentlemen commoners, and we wore very short gowns just below the knee with some tag on either side. I have no idea. Anyway, and that's, you wore a mortarboard only on special occasions like a degree ceremony or being accepted in the university and so forth. Both were on, off. So the rituals persisted, but they didn't do anybody any harm. And so I got involved. My tutor, Arthur Crowe, had been one of my interviewers, a very good teacher, very nice man, whose wife was also a don, also a teacher, but not I don't think in French. And the Orioles had my time, I forgot what they called the head of Oriole, principal, warden, anyway, it doesn't matter, was Sir George Clark, who was a distinguished scholar and had been one of my interviewers, very genial man. Saw him once or twice after that. He was I think a historian of some sort. You never knew who you were going to, you know, who was going to be teaching you. I mean, who was it? The historian, the one who attacked. Oh no, I can't remember. No, it doesn't matter. But there were always arguments among the same college or different colleges about ideas, policies, this, that and the other. Anyway, so life went on. You had a university career, you went to lectures, you had tutorials, you wrote papers. which was submitted and criticised. That's part of the Oxford thing. The tutorial system meant that you had to take an active part. If you wrote an essay on a subject which everybody had to do, and then you had to read it out. And everybody else there could criticise what you, this sharpened the mind, you know. And the tutorials were normally for no more than about half a dozen people, students. And also they were held in the lodgings or rooms of the Don. So Arthur Crowe, who was a French teacher also. I don't think he'd bother with German, it was mainly French and so forth. But he was also the moral tutor, that is, the person who looked after your welfare in case things went wrong. And we got on very well, and I liked Arthur Crowe. His wife was also I think I mentioned also Don. Sir George Clark, the provost of Order, that's right, that was the head of the, he was the provost. Very nice, very genial man. He became the president of the British Academy, and I think he was partly instrumental in my being admitted. He seemed to like what I was talking about. And also Christopher Seton Watson, who was the Dean of Students, famous family, younger man, and all sorts of interesting people. There was a chapel which was attended by, not all, but some of the students. And as I say, a contemporary of mine who was neither Jewish nor Christian was Fazl Imam, the Muslim Indian whose father had also been at Oriel. Interesting people. David Weitzman, who was a year ahead of me at Oriel and was a scientist, got a first and became a university lecturer and a later professor, now retired, living in, I think, Modi'in. And this is what happened. A lot of people I knew have come, those people had a kind of Zionist, even if it was only unconscious, training that made them think about making Aliyah once they retired. But of course we came to it long before all that. Oh, Dons, yes. Who were the Jewish teachers at Oxford? Premier among them was Cecil Roth, the historian, who lived about 20 minutes walk up the road from the centre of town. He and his wife, Irene, who was of a famous Davis family, people who had been translators of Hebrew into English and so forth. But she was a curious person, I won't go into all the details. But he was a person with whom I was to establish a long link.
And with Cecil Roth, did you have a personal connection?
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And did you attend his lectures, or did you?
Yeah, I'll do that. So let's talk about that right away. Cecil Roth had a position which was like that of a readership, which is like a kind of professorship in Jewish studies. It had been created by the members of the Marx Seif family because he was a brilliant man, but when he was still a young don, nobody knew exactly what he was going to be able to do. So they decided that this was the premier Anglo-Jewish scholar, they had to give him a position, so they created this chair, which meant that he had a lifetime and income and freedom for research, and so all he had to do was give one lecture a week, which I attended, because there were very few people who were bothered going to hear Cecil Roth give his weekly lecture. But I was interested, and so were a few other people. I remember one occasion, People came who were not graduate, who were graduates already, or more. And I remember he was involved in a controversy to do with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he had plumped for the identity of the authors of these documents as being X, and everybody else was Y. Now, the particular lecture I remember attending was an young American scholar, whose name escapes me, it doesn't matter, with a great sense of humour. And Cecil Roth once made, in the course of his lecture, and he said, if the truth be told, my expertise really refers to the history of the Jews of Oxford between the years blah 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 blah. This guy picked it up. Dr. Roth, I'm sure that so-and-so mentions in one of his Bibles. Would be interested to hear that you think that you're only an expert. That was funny. Of course it was all taken good part. Cecil's wife was a curiosity. Her father would have said a funniosity. She came from the very distinguished Davis family, who had created writers and playwrights and goodness knows what. But there was something odd about her, sexually. I think she was very repressed. They didn't have children. She was very fond of students, a bit too fond in some cases. And she also had a weakness not everybody was aware of. She was a shoplifter. There were occasions when Cecil was informed that his wife was under detention and he had to go and rescue her. And yet, it continued for a long time. No, it wasn't that the things she took were of very great value or importance. It was just that she saw it, she liked it, she took it. So that was the bane of his life, They didn't have children. It was very difficult. I think that going to Israel was in many ways very good for him, because it brought him into a different and wider world outside the narrow academic one of Oxford. I remember it was, hold on, it must have been about 67, 68. I remember, anyway, I couldn't remember, our first or second son was born in Jerusalem. And I went to the Roth's house in Rehavia to tell them about it, show them pictures and that. And she was very enthralled. Of course she didn't have any children of her own. And he made some very nice thing. I think he gave me, probably gave me his, there's a book he wrote, The Jewish Contribution to Civilization, one of his early works. Yeah. He inscribed it, "Go thou and do likewise." It was a quotation from somewhere or other. I'll never forget that. Of course, he used to spend part of each year in New York at Stern College, Women's College, of Yeshiva University, giving lectures. Probably another way of earning something extra. And when he died, it was a shock, because I didn't know. I mean, look, he was in his early 70s. I always thought of him as being sprightly. He was always walked here and there and everything. What it was exactly, I don't know. But you never can tell in these cases. So he was a great loss. There was also Dr. David Dauber, at All Souls, who was the Regius Professor of Civil War, was a German Jew of Orthodox background, who had become an expert on international law, civil law, this, that and the other. And he was, he had, I think, 2 or 3 sons whom we saw rarely, occasionally on the Yontif, he would bring them to shul. They lived further away than the Ross. I don't know what he did. He didn't normally come on Shabbos. Maybe he'd have it home. This was his Orthodox period. Later on, when he left Oxford and went to America, it all lapsed. He became part of the hippie generation, like a father figure in San Francisco or somewhere, in one of the universities of Berkeley. And it was very sad because, I mean, we all remembered him as being a genial, very Jewish Don. And he became a kind of figure. He used to sit around in cafes, talking dribble. I don't know what went on. And of course, by that stage he was divorced. And what happened to his children, I don't know. It was sad. Another person who became at Oxford was David Patterson. Name mean anything to you? David Patterson came from a Liverpool family. His sister and my mother had been friends. And he initially been very active in Bahabonim. They made Aliyah. They settled at Kibbutz Beit HaEmek, where I had cousins. And then Chaim Rabin, who was the lecturer or reader in Jewish studies, in Hebrew at Oxford, was offered a position of professorship in Hebrew at Hebrew University, which he accepted. He had been the sort of the doyen of the Jewish Society. And my first task as a member was to raise money to buy a farewell present, which meant going round the shops in Oxford till I finally found a silver cup which we had engraved, which he was very appreciative. It was nice for students to do a thing like that. I saw Chaim Rabin years later, but anyway. So David Patterson was the one who took over, and he really revolutionized modern Hebrew studies at Oxford. His widow, still active, Josie. She came from Southport. So that basically was it. There was also, apart from Ross and apart from Dr. Dauber, whom I've been talking about, and David Patterson, there was a registrar of the Jewish community who was a German Jewish refugee, a former Reform rabbi in Germany. And the joke was that he was far more rigorous about who he considered to be Jewish than the so-called Orthodox communal secretary, who was very, easygoing. And we saw him. He attended a liberal or reform service, I think, once a week or so. But I mean, he was a stickler for principle, And there was I had a Professor Stahl in German, I suspected was Jewish, but there was never indication he was interested. There were quite a few Jews, of course, who were Jewish but not involved, of high status professorships and so forth. Activities. Everybody was encouraged to take up some form of sporting activity, Sundays were free. Now, I had been a sharpshooter in the RAF, and also later on in Miluim, I got a marksman's badge. So what could I do? I wasn't keen on playing around with the rifles that were available. So I joined the Oxford Company of Archers, which I was not very good at. Firing at a target with a bow and arrow was not my thing, really. But I did it for a term or two, paid my fees, used the equipment, and then gave it up. But the thing that most people went in for was punting. Punt was a boat, a flat top boat with a recess in it where you could stand, or sit rather, or one end was like sort of blunt and there you could stand and punt along the river, the Charwell, which was very slow flowing stream that went through the bottom of Oxford. Well, anyway, the idea was there were a limited number of Jewish girls and an unlimited number of Jewish males. So, so there was competition to take them out. Now I remember taking out 2 or 3. One of them is a friend of mine to this day, Donya Mayer, who was then Donya, what was her original name? They were a Bradford family.
So you've kept this friendship many years because she comes to all the meetings and...
Yeah. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. That part you can cut. Oh yes. On one occasion, I invited Donya to accompany me on a trip up or down one of the rivers, which I did, and then my pole got stuck in the mud, and I was left. The punt went on, and I was left holding onto this thing until it slowly subsided and dumped me in the river. I got out, and I had to trudge all the way through Oxford to my digs before I could get cleaned up. That was some experience. Not many people went through that. There's still some coffee here. Yeah.
They had the very famous Oxford-Cambridge, the boat.
Oh, the boat race. Yeah, look, it was always on a Shabbos, so you couldn't watch it live. And I was more interested in the college team than in the university one. Orion was very good in my time. Head of the river, that was the top thing several times over. One of the people who was active in it was a member of my old school in Liverpool. What was his name? Gosh, it'll come back to me anyway. He came from what they call honest working class background. They lived near my grandmother, Princess Road, one of the side streets. Very ambitious for their son. And wait a second, the name almost came to me. Glover, that's right, Eric Glover. So the Glovers were very ambitious for him. And they heard that I'd gotten myself into oil. So the mother came round and spoke to my grandmother, and they were non-Jewish people. Would she recommend Oxford or a particular college or anything like that? No, my grandmother was nice, she said. And then she said, well, what about the one your grandson's going to? She said, yes, sir. He applied and he got a scholarship. And a scholarship meant you were a scholar. Top of the undergraduate race, scholars, exhibitionists, commoners. I was a commoner with a playing ground. Astonishing, because I never knew he was so brilliant academic. Anyway, it turned out he was very good. And he also, this is interesting, he's a working class boy, comes to Oxford, and he throws himself into the social life, and this, that, and the other. He joins the boat club, becomes a prominent member of the boat club. Anyway, when I came up, he was already a year ahead of me. I thought for old time's sake I'd invite him round for a cup of tea or something, which I did. He'd become a snob and ignored the invitation. So I just, after that was it, finished. So then he went on, he entered the city, become, you know, I don't know, some kind of a financial something or other, got married to a girl from that kind of background, and they went out and he contracted a disease and died. He was only, I think, 50, something like that. That was Eric Glover. And I'm trying to anybody else in college. David Weitzman I've spoken about, whose uncle was an MP.
Did you ever have contact with Sir Martin Gilbert?
No. Martin Gilbert was just coming up in my time. He really made his career after I left Oxford. I mean, I'm not sure if I knew even of his existence at that stage. I'm not sure at all. There were various dons and non-Jewish people I had contact with as well. There was a historian who became a fellow of the college and later on went on to all kinds of things. He wrote about Hitler and the Third Reich. What's his name now? Oh, never mind, it'll come back. Anyway, he had a set to with some other Don who was an apologist for the Hitler regime. You know, I mean, not altogether, but to some degree. And this Don of ours took him to pieces. Anyway, there were so many people you meet, and you know, you had speakers who came to the Jewish Society. Robert Carvalho, who was a leader of the Sephardic Spanish and Portuguese community in London, was an Oriel graduate, and our paths crossed again years later. And also interesting people came to speak on different subjects, sometimes different religious, sometimes other Jewish subjects, historical subjects.
Did any chief rabbis come to Oxford to speak?
No, but there was one who came who was a rabbi, and that was Diane Morris Swift. There were three, there was a Liverpool family, the three Swift brothers, Morris, Harris and Isaac. And each of them had a special own rabbinic career. Morris Swift, I think, was in South Africa. Harris Swift, I think, was in Australia. Isaac, I think, was in America. And their father was a Frumbala boss, a wealthy man in Liverpool, who was a very pernickety upholder of tradition, but kept his business open on Shabbos. That was the sort of hypocrisy that went on in those days. But it didn't affect the three sons. They all became became rabbis. Who else was there? He came up. Carvalho mentioned, the Swifts I mentioned. Oh yes, there was a Labour MP, Maurice Edelman. You heard the name? Yeah. His daughter Natasha was a competitor, I won't say friend, but you know, a colleague of mine. Unfortunately, he was a good-looking man, and his daughter was far from it. So she had a difficult social life. I'm trying to think who else. There were so many people, you know, some of whom you saw once in a while. There was, of course, one of the best known was Isaiah Berlin. Now, he was definitely a committed Jew in this sense. He didn't take part in anything religious. But he was, anyway, there was a tradition in Oxford that in the summer there were places where people could bathe in the nude, like discreetly. Where the men went was called Parson's Pleasure, and where the women went was called Nun's Delight. Anyhow, the story goes, what they did was they had towels over themselves. The story goes that by mischance, a boatload of lady undergraduates could find itself heading towards Parson's Pleasure, you see. The word got out, and everybody went scrambling to place their towel over their mid parts. Isaiah Berlin covered his face. Afterwards they said, he said, in Oxford I'm known by my face. Anyway, there are lots of stories like that. Anyhow, eventually I completed my course, 3 years, got my degree. I got a good second. In Oxford, most universities have what they call an upper and a lower second. You have first, 2-1, 2-2, 3. In Oxford, it was 1, 2, 3, 4. There were people who got 4 ranking degrees. I don't know what they were worth, but anyway. Some people say that that was the mark of somebody who was going to have a distinguished career. I don't know what Churchill got, but I don't think he went to university anyway. So after that, I get my degree, and what am I going to do? I had put in for a state studentship. That was an extension of the grant that I got that would enable me to do research. That might lead on to something career-wise. My father was very supportive, but just my luck. In his day, he had lost the chance of doing something because of the Geddes Act, which had cut drastically the grants for university graduates. The same thing happened to me with somebody else. There was also, I think it was a Conservative government decided that they were going to do with these Labour privileged thingamabobs. So they cut. So I was out of getting a state studentship with me to go and do research. Now I didn't realise, but they did me a favour because it changed my direction. Had I got that, I would have done some research and something to do with medieval or Renaissance French studies. It would have led to maybe a lectureship somewhere or other, and that would have been that. But instead, I was shoved back on my own resources. As luck would have it, the Minister of our school, Reverend Meyer Wilson, came to us one day when I was sort of, doing nothing in particular, and said, look, have you seen it? It's in Jewish Chronicle. Jewish College, under Dr. Epstein, is offering scholarships with free accommodation to people who wish to attend their new Teachers Institute. Why don't you apply? I thought, I've got nothing better to do. So I applied, and I got an immediate enthusiastic reply from Rabbi Dr. Isidore Epstein. He had never had anybody else from Oxford who had applied to Jewish College, at least not at that stage. So I went and had an interview, and of course I passed the interview, and that meant that I would get free board and lodging at the college, tuition, and I could have a certain amount of time to myself if I wanted to earn some money in the side, which of course I did need. And that started me off on a different track. First of all, it increased my ability to handle Jewish Hebrew and the Aramaic and so forth, Mishnah, Gemara, Dinim. I had good teachers, one of whom I would see years later. Now was Dr. Naftali Vida, who was the person. I had a question, I think I was about a year or so in Jewish College, a question about a source. And I couldn't figure out what the source, I knew the text, but where the source was, I couldn't find. So Dr. Vida was a rather formidable character, but I thought he was the one, it was his field. So I said to him, Dr. Vida, may I trouble you? There was a question. He said, yes. He was a Hungarian Jew. I said to him, I'd like to know whether you could guide me to wherever this came in. He said, I will do so. Yeah. The next day he seeks me out and tells me exactly where what the source was. I was very impressed. Years later, when he retired, he joined the faculty of Bar-Ilan University as a professor or something. Anyway, he was living in Began when we were. I met him on a bus one day, and I said, Dr. Vida, and he said, yes, Sivan. I said, well, I'm Sivan now. Anyway, we compared notes, and he told me, he said, you know what? He said, at Bar-Ilan, I do something I never was able to do at Jewish College. I have a class of students who are all musmachim. To him, this was the acme of, of this happening. Yeah. That was the last time I saw him. But, he was not easily approached, but he had his milers. Anyway, there was Eli Cashton was another of the teachers. He was a specialist in Bible. He always called himself Mr. He was a Muslim, he never used a title. It was always Mr. Cashton. Nephew of his had been at Oxford in my time, Asher. Don't know what happened to him. But the father was a shochet and very active in the community. So look, I attended lectures. I must admit that sometimes I skipped them. Dr. Epstein once caught me on the way out because I was going out to teach somebody something or other to earn a bit of extra money. When he found out what it was all about, he spent a great deal of effort finding suitable people for me. He started off with somebody in North London who needed to learn basic Hebrew. And then that led to somebody else. Anyway, in the end, through his contacts at the St. John's Wood Synagogue, he got me a job with the family. The Green family in St. John's Wood, they lived in one of these very fancy houses in Avenue Road, which was like a millionaire's road. And they had, the father was an ex-East Ender who'd done well for himself. His wife was a Glasgow girl who had a nephew whom I knew from Jewish student things. Anyway, they were very pleased to find me, somebody with my backing record, to teach their children, especially their oldest son, Richard, who would become bar mitzvah in a year's time. I was neither paid well. They used to treat me to tea and cake when I came, and then when he after the Sunday, I think, after the bar mitzvah, which he did perform very well, they put a splash, the first one held in the, what was the name of the place in the West End where they opened a Jewish reception place. What was it called? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was right next to the what was it called? The West, not the West End Synagogue. Marble Arch Synagogue. That was some do. I was invited to attend. First of all, they made a Shabbos lunch after shul, to which about 40 people were invited in the place. And then on a Sunday, they had the big do at the King David and the hall, whatever it was. That was it went on from, say, about 7 in the evening till about 3 in the morning. And by the time I got to 1 a.m., I had a car by then. It was too much. Now they, to show their appreciation, they gave me a typewriter with accents, something new I hadn't had before. And for a time I was invited to go on teaching the other children, until I found somebody in the college who needed a job more than I did, and passed on. He wasn't terribly successful, but anyway, it didn't matter about him. What happened to that family, I have no idea. Whether Richard Green became active in the community or what, but he had a good Jewish education anyway. And Dr. Epstein, I saw on and off until he was forced to retire. There was politics involved. The grandees of the United Synagogue wanted Louis Jacobs as chief rabbi.
It was the whole Jacobs affair.
Yeah, became involved in it to some degree. And I liked him. He was a very likable person. He was a very good teacher. But he allowed himself to be manipulated by a group of, what you call them, then not conservative, the exact opposite. They were people with reformist ideas. They weren't actually reformed, but who didn't like the Beth Din, they didn't like the rabbinate. They wanted to have somebody who would be like them. So now, very foolishly, Louis Jacobs allowed himself to be brought into their ranks. That set him against the whole of the establishment. Not just the United Synagogue, but everybody. He became labelled. In fact, they used to call him Label Jacobs. And I felt sorry for him. And the movement he started up with great fanfare, it would be the new, what is the movement they called the new movement? The New London Synagogue. It would turn out to be conservative. It became a branch of the conservative movement, which in those days was not that terrible. But it was a mistake. He should have remained an independent Orthodox rabbi, minister and so forth. And believe me, he would have got a lot further with that. As it is, his community, all right, so they established one or two branch synagogues, but nothing of great consequence. Anglo Jewry was conservative with a small c as well as a large one. People may not have known what the hell all the art fighting was about, but they didn't. They were happy with what they had, and that was the problem that was faced by these people. They couldn't budge. They wouldn't budge anyway. The last time I saw Louis Jacobs was in Jerusalem. I was walking somewhere near Rehov Yaakov, the corner of Ben Yehuda, I think it was, and I suddenly spotted him walking nearby. Anyway, I decided, what's the point? I'm going to go up to him. He's going to be offended because I had been asked to take part in an article for a Jewish student magazine, whose name I've even forgotten, and about the Jacobs affair. A friend of mine, Kenneth Zuck, who'd been in the RAF at the same time as me, but he was in Iraq when I was in Germany. So he was very much in favour of Louis Jacobs, and he decided he would write the article. So I was given the task of writing the article, criticising him, you see, which is a bit embarrassing because, after all, you know, Kenneth had not been taught by him, and I had. Anyway, I explained very carefully why I finally come down to the conclusion that I could not join his career. He was very annoyed. In his first book of memories, he really denounced me as he didn't actually call me an ignoramus, but anyway, he said, a person who didn't understand what was involved or something like that. Well, you know, water off a duck's back. So that was one of the, anyway, eventually at one stage, as I'd been at college about 2 years or so, somebody suggested that maybe my next step should be to join the British Friends of Bar Ilan University. Bar Ilan was then 5 years old, a small institution with a limited number of backers and so forth. But the committee was quite distinguished. There was Robert Carvalho, there was Basil Bard, who was a very important scientist. There was, what's his name? Abba Bornstein, who was leading figure in the Mizrahi movement, and some younger people as well. And I was offered, the man who had run it to that point was, what's his name? So names escape me all the time. He was one of the sons of Rabbi Unterman, the former rabbi of Israel, of Liverpool, who became chief rabbi of Israel. He had run it as his own sort of private thing in Hendon. Never looked to extend it to any degree. The Hendon Friends of Bar-Ilan University. The committee was not very satisfied. They hoped that I would broaden it, which I did. I first started off by creating a younger Friends of Bar-Ilan University from people I knew, which became a very successful social group. We were competing with what the Hebrew University had. And then I started branches: Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow. And they all started to raise money for scholarships, which is a way of sending money to the university. But this was not what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I got the job on a proviso that they would allow me time to go on with the research project which I had been developing at London University. Oh yes, yes, yes. But when it came down to it, all they were interested in was me helping to raise money, and I did a hell of a lot. I mean, Morris Unterman never left London except when he went back to his old haunts in Hove, and I was all over the place trying to create. I mean, I wrote articles for the Jewish Chronicle. I even got an article in the Anti-Religious Jewish Observer Middle East Review, which was run by the Kimchi family. You know, David Kimchi, John Kimchi. It was they must have been very impressed with me, because they published a whole article that I'd written explaining what the university was about and what it wasn't, and so forth. And I was most impressed. I mean, this was good journalism. Anyway, after how many years? 2.5, 3 years, I got fed up. And also I was getting engaged. And I thought to myself, where's this going to lead me? They haven't told me that it's going to lead me to an academic position at Bar-Ilan. So I asked, but I didn't get a proper answer. So when it came to the point, I decided, oh damn it. I got engaged, and I put out some feeders in Israel about a job. Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. The British Friends of Bar-Ilan University were not pleased with the fact that I was going out on my own, and in fact, because I wrote a letter of complaint to the president of the university, a certain American rabbi, who took offence as if I'd been very insubordinate or whatever. Anyway, as it was, they told me, you're finished. Don't you expect to get any job at Bar-Ilan, whatever happens. That's what they was telling me.
Even though you raised so much money and worked so hard?
I wouldn't say raised money, but I put the university on the map, which it hadn't been before, so that when somebody took over, he had something to work with. I was disgusted. And I thought, that's it. In the end, years later, I got myself a doctorate from Hebrew University, which is probably worth more anyway. And much better treatment. Wow, wow, wow. Look, the what was it called? The administrative head of Harvard University was an ex-British Zionist. What was his name? Oh, golly. So I have to fish for names now. That's my weakness. It'll come back to me anyway. Very, very distinguished British Zionist. And he was very sympathetic. And I got very good supervisors for my thesis. They were so good that they didn't change a comma in what I'd written. And so, armed with that I was able to shake the dust about that off which is sad, because I think we could have led, if they'd been decent enough to offer me a lectureship, I could have still done a great deal. But they didn't. They told me, don't expect to get anything if you go another year. Not from us. That was wrong. That was the head of the university who was in residence at Yeshiva University in New York. Rabbi, what's his name? You know, I used to have these names at the tip of my fingers.
That was fun. So, were you still associated with Jews College at this time?
No, only to the extent that I knew people from
How long did you spend at Jews College?
From 59 to 61, something like that. 2.5 years, I think it was.
And it was a good experience?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, it improved my Jewish background, Judaica background. But it also brought me into contact with people, well, yeah, Chief Rabbi Brody, Rabbi Epstein, all kinds of people, or visitors who came to the college, and then people of my generation who went on to achieve great things. Cyril Harris became Chief Rabbi of South Africa.
Cyril Harris from Jews College?
Yes. And this one went to America. Raymond Apple, who was my exec and temporary, had also got a degree. Went on to become senior minister of the Great Synagogue in Sydney. And there were many others as well.
Lord Jacobowitz, did you have any contact with?
Don't talk to me about Jacobowitz. He didn't do me any harm. But when my brother Vivian was starting smicha studies, he after I had been at yeshiva, not everybody in the same category had been to Gateshead or Manchester Yeshiva. Anyhow, the college allowed him, or encouraged him, to come to Israel for a year, and together with a lot of his contemporaries, and such as what's his name from Manchester, who writes the column. I think you'll have to cut some of this because
no, you're doing amazing.
I fished the names. It's terrible. Jeffrey Cohen. Jeffrey Cohen, that's right. It normally comes to me like that. Jeffrey Cohen has a column in on the internet. Anyway, so what happened was that they all went to, what was it, the institution in Beit Vegan? The what was it called, the institution? Harry Fischel. And Jacobowitz had an arrangement with them that after a year, Harry Fischel would come back, he would give them a quick test and then give them smicha, which would advance their careers. Now, technically Vivian should have been in the same category, except he chose to go to Merkaz Arab, which was one step higher. And he didn't stay for a year, he stayed for a year and a half. While we were living in Beit Vegan, he was a Ben Beit. We used to come, spend Shabbos with us, Yom Tov with us. He finishes his time, goes back, the others have already gone on, and he goes and says, well, Rabbi Jacobowitz, I'm back now, what's going to happen? Oh, I'm awfully sorry, but there's been a change. I can't start granting semicha now, but you may be able to do it if you go to Yeshiva Eitz Chaim. Yeshiva Eitz Chaim was old-fashioned Lithuanian yeshiva in East England, with a head who gave smicha once in 50 years, a sort of thing, you know. It was a terrible thing to do to a young student. I never forgave Jacobowitz for that. So he had to go back to his where he'd been the student minister. Now he became the deputy minister. Now, he was lucky that he had me as a brother, because by that time I was already in Johannesburg as the head of the education department, the Zionist Fed. And when I heard what had happened, I said, listen, I said, maybe you should consider coming here for a while. I could maybe arrange something for you. I already had connections, especially with Rabbi Casper. But he didn't go to the, anyway, there was a system the Zionist Fed had, I think it was called the summer school or something. They used to invite lecturers from outside to come. So I was invited, very nice. I came, I had a list of subjects, I gave talks. I was invited to a social event by the Ministers Association, which meant basically the Mizrahi in Cape Town. And he talked to people and so forth. And fly back to Johannesburg. A couple of weeks later I get a letter. Have I not told you this story? I get a letter from a certain rabbi in, what was the name of the place? Claremont.
Claremont in Cape Town?
Yeah, yeah. He says, it was a pleasure meeting you, blah, blah, blah. I understand that you have a single brother, and it so happens I have a single daughter. I thought this was lunacy. I mean, my brother had just been through a broken engagement with someone from a nice family. It didn't work out. I thought, this is, so I said to him, listen, I'll try and, if you want interested, let me. Otherwise, anyway, I get more letters from this rabbi in Cape Town. Keeps coming. In the end, I gave up and I said, listen, why don't you, you've got holiday due, you can afford a flight. Take book an air ticket to Cape Town by way of Johannesburg, which in any case you've got to do. Go and meet the girl and see what you think of it. So which he did. And he arranged the flight, and I arranged that if nothing came of it, he'd come and stay with us for a while in Johannesburg. I think by that stage we were already in Germiston, but anyway. So, the next thing is, he rings me up from the airport, I presume Jan Smuts then, and he says, look, I've accepted this invitation to go and visit them. So I said, fine, okay, Beseda. 27 hours later, he rings up and says, I'm engaged.
Amazing.
Who's the rabbi? A certain Rabbi Mervis. Lionel Mervis. Rabbi Dr. Lionel Mervis. Of, what was the community there? Some halfway between Musenberg and the Cape. Claremont. Yeah, he was at Claremont. So, there was he goes back to London, rearranges things there. Rabbi Mervis speaks to Chief Rabbi Harris, arranges that he gets him a job to start him up, and a gallery and so forth. The Chief Rabbi, was it? No, he wasn't Louis Rubin, with whom I had a good relationship anyway. No, it must have been Casper. Well, Casper also had a similar background. So it all worked out, and he retires from the United Synagogue, but keeps his pension scheme going very wisely, and comes out to South Africa. The first job he gets was in where they produce the wine in the Cape. Big wine growing area.
It's Rondebosch.
Paarl.
In Paarl?
Yeah.
He was in Paarl?
He was in Paarl.
It's a very small community in Paarl. It's a very small...
Yes, I know. But it was something to start him off. I was, hold on, I know what the balance. Yeah, I used to get jobs for the Yomim Noraim. Took me to various parts of the world. And a few times I was in South Africa, so one of these occasions, on the way home, I went and spent a week with them in Paarl when he was already married. And from there he went to, I was in Germiston, and he went to, what was the name of the guy? What was the name of the community he went to in no. Oh, well, anyway, whatever it was at those communities near Germiston.
And you already had smicha?
No, that was the whole point. As a result of teaching there and the experience, he would be checked not by Casper, but by Diane, what's his name? He had a brother at Dar Shul in Jerusalem.
Was Rav Kutztag?
Kutztag, yes.
That was Rabbi Eloy's son-in-law.
Aloni, yes. Yeah, I know. Wheels with wheels.
Moshe Kutztag.
Yeah, Moshe Kutztag. Well, there was a Kutztag here whom I knew from the shul. So Kutztag gave me smicha. Okay, I mean, it was a proper thing, and he deserved it because he knew. He had the knowledge. And that started him off, you see. And that started me off with the Mervises.
Who became the chief rabbi in England.
Yeah. So it just shows you how things work out.
So can I just ask, Gavriel, can we backtrack? Where did you meet your wife, and where did your wife come from?
My wife was a fellow Liverpudlian, but I didn't know her or her family. Look, I'd left when I went in the forces, and apart from occasional visits to be with the family over Yom Tov or something, I really didn't have much to do with the community. And so I didn't know who did what or anything. But when I was working to create the Friends of Bar Ilan groups, we set one up in Liverpool, and Arnold Pink was the treasurer. And this may have been after my first visit to Liverpool. The students invited me to come and talk about Bar Ilan or this and that. Anyway, what. Now, the city centre had changed because of the bombing. I didn't recognise areas, and I was supposed to find my way to where there was a Jewish club, a student centre. I couldn't find it. I didn't know where I was. Eventually, by making various inquiries, I managed to get there about an hour later than the scheduled time. They were all waiting breathless. What was it? What happened? I explained. Oh, quick. They said they arranged the secretary, go and get him a glass of cold water. He's going to need it. Anyway, she was so affected by this that she spilled it all over me. And that's how we met. What do you think of that?
And you got married in Liverpool?
Yes, at Chilwell Synagogue, with my two grandmothers present. We got a photograph somewhere. And my grandmother had known her grandmother as when they were girls. It's a small world where, like that. So that's how it worked out. And she was then studying for a law degree, which in fact she did better than I did. She got a first-class degree at Liverpool University, and she was very active in the student society. She arranged the catering for for meals somewhere. I don't know what it was exactly. Anyway, she was always involved. And now, hold on. This time, yes, the continuation. So, despite all of the activities and the Bar Ilan and this, that, and so forth, I was getting nowhere. And also, I'd been warned. Dr. Basil Bard, the treasurer, warned me, don't expect to get a job at Bar Ilan. They're furious with you. Why furious with me? Because I wanted to do better in life. Anyway, I was furious with them. So I decided, that's it, I'm not bothering anymore. I started, we decided we were going to make Aliyah in the spring of '67, not knowing what was going to be happening. And I started writing to people, any ideas about what I can do. I got a reply from Dr. Jeffrey Wiggether, who was had been the head of overseas broadcasting and had shown me around on a previous visit from the Helenia Malka, the building there. We went up to the top and he pointed out where the Jordanians were, and we better not show ourselves too much, they like firing. So that was my first experience of that. So it was Jeffrey who replied and said, look, we've just started off a project for what will be the Encyclopedia Judaica. And there will be positions open. Would you like to join as a junior editor? So I said, yes, please. we make Aliyah after the war, and no, I'm sorry, we make Aliyah before the war, but after the war, we start looking for somewhere to live, and ended up in Beit HaKerem. But by that time, I'd been working in Tel Aviv, at the Library of Tel Aviv University, because Bailan was sending me, not Bailan, the encyclopedia, was sending me material to edit in a better form or improve this, that and the other. So I get consignments of the articles, which I started working on. I think I had a typewriter with me, I can't remember. Anyway, I typed it all up and I sent it back. And then a few weeks later I get another consignment. Time's going on. Pesach comes, and hold on. What was this? This must have been just before the war broke out.
In '67.
Yeah. So we go and see Viva's grandmother had decided to make Aliyah on her own. She was a very independent lady, businesswoman. And she was living in Bat-Yam. She said, come, we've got a spare room. Stay with us with me for Pesach, which was very nice. It was good for her and good for us. But by that time, I was getting fed up. I mean, I'm sending these articles, I'm not here, don't hear, all they do is send me others. So, I decided, Viva and I talked to him and said, listen, you can't go like this. After Pesach, we'll go up to Jerusalem, find this place, and ask what the hell is going on, which we did. Now I get to the place, it was the new offices in Kiryat Moshe, Sderot HaMeiri, and I go in and I introduce myself, and the lady at the desk said, just a minute, I'll go and see what's what. And she said, oh, okay, when do you want to start? I hadn't even been offered a job yet, you see, when you want to start. I said, as soon as you can make the arrangements. She said, okay, I suggest you try and get into Beit Giora, which was the, Beit Pradeski in Tel Aviv. We might be able to help there, and come back as soon as everything's ready. And that's how it started. The war breaks out. We were all, and what was going on, not knowing for a period of a week. After the war, we start clearing up again, moving the furniture back. I open the drawer, and there are all the articles that I never been touched.
They never used them.
It was just something to keep me waiting, I suppose. I had no idea. They'd made up their mind in advance that they were going to take me. I was the youngest staff editor. And they obviously, Jeffrey probably had something to do, and Sassolov, obviously, who was the top editor. So I already had friends at court, you see. But maybe they didn't have the influence on the administrators that they would have done if the decisions had been theirs alone.
Gavriel, who else was the editors? There was Cecil Roth and you and...
Louis Rabinovitz,
The benefits.
Later on with my old friend Gavriel Posner. Who else was there? What's his name? From South Africa, Louis Souden, whose wife was a journalist. He'd been on the staff of, I think, the Rand Daily Mail, something like that. Who else was there? Oh yes, the also a rabbi, a German family.
But this was a major undertaking to do the Encyclopedia
Yeah, yeah. I had the whole building there. I met a lot of people. What was the name of the one I should have known? Karlebach. Alexander Karlebach had been Chief Rabbi of North Island, and he became one of the leading editors. All kinds of people. Moshe Rossetti had been clerk of the Knesset, a former East End Jew. And you know, people that's where I met Chaim Rabin again, because he was one of the contributors. So there are lots and lots of interesting people. Oh yes, another one of my fellow editors. I shared a room with 2 or 3 older people who were all retired or about to retire. There was Moshe Rossetti, who'd been clerk of the Knesset. There was, what's his name now, who'd been in the Foreign Service. The names come back when you're not thinking of them. Anyway, he'd been ambassador of Israel in Vienna. An interesting story. He was very active in the Kehillah in Rehavia. What's it called now? It's a Yekish Kehillah in Rehavia, in Gan Rehavia. It is. His name.
Yeshurun, the Yeshurun?
No, not Yeshurun. It's round the corner up here, further up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. His brother was a famous professor of education at Hebrew University. They were Yekkers. What was their name? Anyway, he was an ambassador, and he had stories to tell about his experiences. Moshe Rossetti had stories to tell. Oh, one of his stories was great. He said that he'd worked for many years for the JNF, raising money for projects in Eretz Israel, as it then was. And he said that they were looking for donors. They heard that there was a East European style Jew who had become the head of a coal mine in Wales. And they thought maybe they could get something there. So letters were written and replied neither yes nor no. So finally they decided they'd send him up by train to talk to the man instead of getting over, which he did. But he gets off at the stations in the middle of nowhere. He has to find a taxi to take him to the palatial residence where the boss lives. Goes and knocks at the door, and he says, "Oh yes, he is expecting, Mr. So-and-so's expecting you." They show him into a room 100 feet long. He's just standing there, he doesn't try and find a chair, and there's a sort of droning noise coming from the end of the room. After a time he says, "I'll go and see what's going on." He goes there, and what does he find? A little old Jew sitting at a table with a Gemara in front of him. Bareheaded.
Bareheaded.
Now he was the son of a rabbi. He may not have been very frum, but he knew what was what. Couldn't believe his eyes. So the man looks up, he says, yes, what? So he says, "Well, I'm Rossetti from that." "Oh, yes. No, so tell me what it's all about." So he explains at length what the Jewish National Fund is trying to do in Eretz Israel and the Jewish people and this, that, and the other. Man listened to him, he said, "No, listen," he says, You go back to London, you send me some literature, and I'll let you know. He said he'd been all this way. He hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 24 hours, virtually. And he didn't even offer him a cup of tea. So anyway, he left. Managed to get a taxi, or the same taxi, I don't know what. And gets back to the station, gets the train back to London, he goes in, he reports, he says, it's a brothel about all. The man's been sugar, he's some kind of ex-East European Jew who's living a life of a goy, or a sort of half Jew there. I've never seen anything like it. Forget about it. Anyway, so time goes on, and one day they come to him from the Jewish National Fund, or wherever it was, and they say, we've had a notification from a lawyer in Wales to say that the former owner passed away, and after making provisions for his daughter, he's divided the rest of his estate between the Zionist Federation and what was it called? And the Salvation Army. That was something that happened. That was a story, one of the stories that he had to tell.
That's amazing.
There was another story that he told about when he was sent out on a mission to the south of Wales, the coalfields area. And there he was put out with a mining family in a bunk bed, and next to it there was a bookshelf. And he looks at the bookshelf, books in Hebrew. It's a mining family. What's going on here? He looks at them as a Mishnah and a Siddur. Anyway, he gets up in the morning and he says, oh, by the way, thank you for the thing. I noticed there's some books there in Hebrew. How did they get here? And the man said, oh, my grandfather was a Jew. There were stories like this that I heard from all of them, including, what was the name of the ambassador? Simon. Akiva Ernst Simon was the professor at the Hebrew University, and the one I knew was Michael Simon, who was the ambassador. And Michael Simon was a great guy. The stories he told about, he and his brother made Aliyah way before the Nazis came to power. They were already here by 1930. He was telling this story about how, in those days, when they were young men, there was an Italian shipping line that used to offer cheap voyages to Trieste, where they could also book you in accommodation, but you had to pay for it. Anyway, the whole thing cost about £5, garnished. So he was able to afford to take his whole family there occasionally for the trip alone by sea was worth it. Anyway, they get there, the first or second time they go there, and they decided they're over weekend. We'll go to shul Friday night. There's a temple there.
It's actually Montefiore. I've been in Trieste. It's one of the biggest shuls in Europe.
Yeah. Well,
it was financed by Montefiore.
So, well, I'm telling you, so this must be the same place. So they go to this temple, and the rabbi appears. He's got a shovel hat like this, a black robe. Looks like something out of goodness knows where. And he starts serving the Italian. And he's talking about Nella Malkuda de Shamayim, he's part Hebrew, part there. He said, no, I'm sorry, it was in Italian, only Italian. And then all of a sudden he says, Shema Yisrael. He said his young son turned to Michael Simon and said, Abba, Agalach hazeh medaber Ivrit. Now, what happened to this man? This man later became the chief rabbi of Rome, And after the fascists started to crumble, he took refuge in the Vatican.
And I think he converted.
Yeah, became a Muslim. He and his wife and family.
It was quite a scandal.
Yeah, so then by that time he called himself Zoli, not Zola. Anyway, so stories you hear. Oh, there were lots of them. There was, I told you about Gavriel Sivan, I told you about Rossetti. Louis Southern from South Africa, I told you more or less what the experiences were as an anti-apartheid, and anti-government agitators. Anyway. And there were other people as well. Lots and lots of them.
Can I ask you, with the Encyclopedia Judaica, who decided which articles would go in or which?
And it was the editorial board.
And how did they get the photographs with copyright and with? It's a major undertaking.
Yeah, copyright. You need mainly deal with material that had not been used before, not been published before. Or if it had been, you could get the rights, pay, I suppose, a fee. I did this once or twice. I wanted a photograph for an article, I had to write and get permission. In one case, I approached, who was a famous Orthodox financier in New York. Famous family, New York Jews. Anyway, he didn't charge me anything. He gave me permission to do what I did. But some people, sometimes you're successful, sometimes not.
It's a major undertaking. It
was. It employed maybe 100 people, something like that, full time. And the money came from America, from the Encyclopedia Judaica Foundation. And they had their own director and staff there. But the work was conducted in Jerusalem. Cecil Roth. It was very interesting. The senior staff were all British background, not American. There was Cecil Roth. There was Jeffrey Wigger. There was Louis Rabinowitz. And others. Very interesting.
Were you involved in the yearbooks as well?
Yeah, the first. There was one that came out a year after the whole thing appeared, and my name appears there as, I think, as assistant editor or something. And John's going to have a look out of interest. Never remember exactly what was what. Page it says.
So Gavriel, this is the Encyclopedia Judaica, the yearbook 1974. And here we have the editor, Rabbi Professor Louis Rabinowitz, and staff editor Gavriel Sivan. And then we have the other editors. It's amazing, and if we can show the cover, it's a.
Did you see the cover?
Yeah. So the Encyclopedia Judaica is in so many homes and so many institutions. It's the gold standard.
There's nothing like.
There's nothing like it.
Nothing with the scope. Here's Yitzhak Rishon, who was the publisher. It was interesting. He and Moshe Shalvi, remember the name Shalvi? She's still alive, I think, Alice Shalvi. Her husband Moshe and I were very friendly. He was, his father had a kind of unofficial job at the Encyclopedia Judaica. He was a retired man with a black yarmulke, and he used to sit near the entrance smoking and looking at people. I don't know what he was. He had nothing better to do with himself as a retiree. But his son, Moshe Shalvi, was the husband of Alice Shalvi. No, he was Moshe. That was his name. No, he wasn't Moshe Shalvi. He was Moshe. No, he was Shelby. Shelkovitz. No, because his wife took the name. His wife was Alice Shelby. The professor was the daughter of a very well-known Orthodox layman in London, also on the panel of the Mizrahi Federation. What was his name? Oh Lord. Oh, never mind. I'm just looking at the... Look, who are the editorial staff? Rabbi Professor Louis Rabinovitz. Then come... I, for some reason, South here. Then Misha Luvish, Lachman, Moshe Shalvi, and Fred Skolnick, copy editor. Hillel Weisberger was also British. Leora Kroyanka, Yara Eisenberg, and Shlomo Yehudayam. Fred Skolnick later got himself a job as the editor of a new post, a Judaic volume, I don't know what. His qualifications were very weird. I mean, he was a copy editor, basically that was it. I don't know what his Jewish background was at all, or scholarship. He was a technician, and somehow or other he got himself this job. It amazed me.
And Gavriel, how long did you work in the Encyclopedia Judaica?
Well, hold on. This published. This was in my last years. This was in '74, so I was there '67 to '74.
And when did they complete the volumes from 8?
No, the original set was completed, I think, in '71, which is where they published the obituaries to Cecil Roth. Yeah. And
when did you start your doctorate at Hebrew University?
Oh, that came years later. That came, hold on, before I went to South Africa. So we're talking about, this is after Bar Ilan, and after I'd done the research. Hold on. I'll tell you when, because I've got the certificate on the wall.
This is the Encyclopedia Judaica, the full set with the yearbooks. So Gavriel, this is your doctorate at Hebrew U.
Yeah, not Bar Ilan.
And how long did you spend at Hebrew U?
I'll tell you the truth, it was an external course. I didn't attend any lectures.
No, you didn't attend any?
I did a research project with the backing of university professors.
And who were
on the basis of the fact that when I first applied to university to do a research course, and I mentioned the fact that I had an Oxford MA, she said, oh, that's enough. Now, I knew perfectly well it wasn't, it was a courtesy degree. Your degree was the BA. The MA you got 4 years later automatically. That was dating from the Middle Ages. But, all right, I'm going to argue with people.
And who were the professors that you were?
I had a professor at Hebrew University, wonderful man, Shlomo Pines. He was a scholar on the Rambam and various medieval things like that. He was a wonderful person. He had been discovered. He was a refugee from Eastern Europe who had been working as a sort of, I don't know what, translator or something at the Foreign Ministry until he was discovered. Somebody came from one of the East European universities at that stage and inquired about me. He said, you know, he must be a top professor by now. Find out who this man is. They discover him working as a backroom boy somewhere or other. So he immediately given himself given a big job and stuff as head of something or other. He was known for his books. He was an expert on all kinds of things to do with medieval Hebrew philosophy. You want to come through?
Gavriel, this is a picture with you with President Yitzhak Navon.
That's right.
When was the picture taken?
It must be about 70, 60, 70, 70.
And this is
Well,
in
that must be about 1980 something.
this is in South Africa.
Oh yes, this was early on. Viva was doing some work on the side at the time. That's why she's in the picture. Man here was a famous writer in London who became a cultural director of the Board of Deputies.
And in the middle is Leah Bronner.
That's right. And next to her is a very famous writer who survived the concentration camps.
Is it Elie Wiesel?
Yeah. You know he paid a visit to South Africa, he was a lecturer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yes. Marcus Bronner, Marcus, what's his name is next to him. The guy there, I can't remember his name. He was a sort of elderly cultural person. You know who this is, of course, Dennis Diamond.
Dennis Diamond, yeah.
What's his name?
And then in this picture here, this is you with
Dr. Israel Goldstein, Rabbi Dr. Israel Goldstein, who was the last of the great American Zionist leaders with Stephen Wise and other people. This is taken in their house in Tel Aviv, where I worked for several years. Great man.
These are such precious photographs. Here's a picture with you and your wife.
Well, oh, this? That's the calendar picture, yeah. These are our children. That's our eldest son, Pinchas, and his wife. Second son, Aryeh, and his wife, who's the daughter of Ben Meir, of the Mafdal as he was. This is Betzalel, whose wife's father was the wealthiest man in Brazil. He owned mines there. And he still got somebody running them, but he decided he had enough of Brazil, came back. But he left his children here in Israel to be educated. So that's Betzalel, Pinchas. Oh, and that's our daughter Shira. She runs the Brot Jewish Cultural Center in North Tel Aviv. And her husband is an investment banker.
Oh, this is wonderful.
And there's my wife.
How many years have you been married?
Wow, since 1966. 66, 34, 44, 54, getting on for 60 years.
Clean and horror, it's amazing.
Not yet.
So Gabriel, after you finished at the Encyclopedia Judaica, that incredible, monumental work, then you got a position in South Africa.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
What happened was that I was a junior member of the National Executive of the Mizrahi Federation in London. They had their own contacts and movement people in, like the Bronner family in South Africa. The Zionist Federation had been looking for somebody to run their cultural program. They didn't want, the Board of Deputies had somebody to do that. Was, his name is Lewis, Chaim Lewis, that was his name. He's the one in the photograph on the far left. So he was a well-known Anglo-Jewish writer before he came to South Africa. And Soho Address was one of his books, I remember. What happened was, there was a shidduch made, partly behind my back. I didn't realise what was going on. The Mizrahi Federation wanted somebody with the right background to give them an in on what was going on in the Zionist Fed, you see. The revisionists ran it, the general Zionists were sort of backseat people, and the left, the Politzer even more so. And then there was the reform, it was terribly mixed up with Labour, I think. And the Mizrahi felt that they had enough strength and support, to get and that would require getting somebody who has some status. So anyway, eventually, because of my contacts, including Sri Asael, who had been a sort of shaliach to the Mizrahi in London, whom I knew from there, and whose wife worked at the Encyclopedia Judaica, you see. Sri Esther Asael, very nice woman. So, my name was put forward apparently. I wasn't even aware of it at the time, that I should be regarded as a candidate. So, they must have pushed this thing at the Zionist Fed, which not too enthusiastic, because especially revisionists didn't want the Mizrahi to have too much say at anything. On the other hand, they thought, well, let's see, he's got an Oxford degree, he might not be so terrible, and that's what happened. The next thing I know is the whole delegation of South African Zionist people at the King David Hotel invite me to come and see them, you see. So go to the King David Hotel, I go there, and I remember, I think Julius Weinstein was there, and I think Marcus Harkin. I don't know who else there was. Anyway, so they grilled me, you know, what's my background? They knew most of this already anyway. What did would I be able to do what they want somebody in my position to do? Is that? We talked about what this. They said, look, you've been proposed for a job as Torah education officer. Would you be interested in something a bit higher up the ladder, you see, like director of education? I said, fine. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not asking for a job for political reasons. Oh, they were very pleased with that. So that's how it worked out. And I had a very strange relationship with the Mizrahi in South Africa, you know. Leila Bronner didn't particularly like me, I don't think. I think maybe she thought, yeah, because I had a doctorate and this, that, the other, it was a bit. But on the other hand, I won't say she did me any harm.
But her husband, you knew her husband?
Yes. Rabbi Joseph Bronner. Yeah, he was probably friendlier than she was.
He was the rabbi in Bnei Kivishol before Rabbi
Yeah. Well, yeah, a strange history. They ended up in Hollywood, didn't they?
They went to I think their daughter in the States, in Los Angeles.
Yes, they went there. Well, they came from the States and they went back.
Originally, he was from Belgium, from Antwerp.
I thought he was German originally.
From Antwerp, and they managed to escape on the last, really at the last moment.
He was one of the lucky ones. Anyway, I quite liked him. I wasn't keen on her. I thought she was too self-important. She liked to sort of preen herself on being this and that and doing this anyway. What was I going to say?
So what was your position when you came to South Africa?
I was appointed to be Director of Education, I think. Director of Education and Information, which meant two things in one. The things that I like to do anyway. I like to give lectures, I like to meet people, I like to get around. And I also like to run an office, you know, look for ways of getting invitations to go to the various places, which I did. I was everywhere from the Cape right up into the top of the Transvaal. What was the place there? Not Welcome, it was somewhere.
There's Warmbads.
Yeah, maybe that, or somewhere like that.
Petersburg.
I'd been there on a couple of occasions when the whole community more or less came out, such as it was.
And your offices, was it in the Zionist Federation building?
Yes, yeah. On the whatever floor it was, with all the other
It was in Wall Street. It was a very imposing building.
Oh yes, with the underground garage. It was also very imposing with its fleet of cars. I remember I bought one of them. They said to me, we can offer you a Toyota. I'd never driven a Japanese car before. and it's not new, but it's been well serviced and it's in very good condition, and we can offer it you for whatever, a few hundred rands or something. I paid it off, and I was very happy. I'll tell you, I had an accident with a car, it survived, and it saw me through, and I got more for it when I sold it than I'd paid for it before.
And Gavriel, where did you stay? In which area did you live?
We started off in Emerentia, off Barry Herzog Avenue. The shul was on one side and we were a bit higher up on the other.
Do you remember who the rabbi of the shul was? Was it Zaitchik?
Yes, yeah, Rabbi Zaitchik. He was a Ben Bite. He used to come. When we wanted to entertain people, we invited him because he was full of stories and this and jokes, and he used to he amused us with the way he used to imitate people. So, and of course, he had been very close to Rabbi Bernard.
From Oxford Shul.
Yeah, they came from Telz.
They came from Telz.
Yeah.
Rabbi Bernard married us. We got married in Oxford Shul.
Ah.
So,
what, you got married? I see. Yes, no, he was a much more serious character than Zaitchik was. Zaitchik was a bit of a playboy.
And can I ask, were you...
He came back here, you know, he came back here, and I don't know what happened to him. He was supposed to be teaching at some institution.
Were you worried about apartheid and what was going on in South Africa with the government and the politics?
Look, when we were there was not much in the way of violence as far as I remember. But on the other hand, I was aware of other things. I mean...
What years were you in South Africa?
70, must have been 74. 75, 78, I think I mentioned that before.
There was the Soweto riots.
Yes, I know, I remember. I remember. We had a black girl, the usual business, is living on the other side of the yard, that kind of stuff. Viva tried to educate her into what to do with the money she earned from being with us. And we insisted that she eat meals with us, that we wanted to treat her as a human being. She was very reluctant. I mean, it was sort of, I don't know what, driven into them that, you know, there were two worlds and you, anyway. Viva was always very, very liberal. But she was very good with the children. And we liked her. Was it Doris? I can't remember. No, that was... Doris was first.
And in your position, did you have to attend, or were you associated with the schools, King David?
Yes,
or?
Yes. I was occasionally invited to come and speak at an assembly. It was not very inspiring.
At King David, both King Davids?
Yeah, and Yeshiva College, I seem to remember.
Do you remember Rabbi Tenzer?
Yeah, of course. He was head of Yeshiva. There was also the Kollel, where I had some old contacts. What was it?
There was Rabbi Grossness, came a bit later, Rabbi Grossness, Baruch Etzender Grossness.
No. There was somebody else there.
Shekavitsky started.
Ah, that's right, Shekavitsky. My wife's father and he had some contacts in England. He came from a literature family. I don't think they were so much sugar before, but anyway.
And do you remember Yovel?
Of course I remember Yovel. Yiddish Yovel, yeah.
Did you, how long did you stay?
Yovel.
How long did you stay in Emerentia?
Emerentia? About 2 years.
And then where did you move to?
Oh, I'm sorry, Emerentia was started off, no, we were there maybe a year before we moved to Germiston. We stayed in Germiston until we left.
And you were involved with the shul in Germiston?
Yes, yeah, of course, I was the minister. I had the job they were looking for. They'd sacked the previous minister, a young man, I don't know what was wrong, but there was bad blood there. However sympathetic I was, unfortunately, during my first months there, he sat in the front row watching everything I did and said. It reminds me of the story about Louis Jacobs told, a very funny story about when he got his first job in London at the New West End Synagogue, and he said he had the experience of having on either side of him ex-ministers. On the one side was, what was his name now, famous preacher, Ephraim Levine, who had a habit of gnashing his false teeth when he didn't like something that he heard. On the other side was Louis Jacobs, who of course was falling out of favour with the more Orthodox community. And so Chaim Pearl, who took over, said that it was the most unhappy period of his career, because if Louis Jacobs was asked to speak at something and he said something that Ephraim Levine didn't like, Ephraim Levine would gnash his teeth. It was audible. And the funny thing was, Ephraim Levine was not from. He was a minister of the old style. I mean, I won't say he went shopping, but there were stories that he used to go to, what was the name of the famous department store. Anyway, he used to buy grouse. No, it was a kosher bird, but it hadn't been kosher slaughtered, but apparently he was prepared to overlook that. That was the story, I don't know. It's true, huh? But his son was more from than he was. He was an elder of the United Synagogue and a great friend of my brother Vivian. That really helped him.
And Gavriel, can I ask, it's your position, did you also have any association with Wits University? With the university?
Not really. I was invited, Leah Brunner got me invited to speak to one of the classes in French literature. And I chose as my subject something to do with my field of study, which to do with what was going on in the 16th century. Which was very interesting. It was way away from what they normally did. But afterwards, the lady who was like the head of the department said to me, "By the way, I hope you don't think this is going to lead to a job." So I said, "Never dreamt it." Somebody put that idea in their head. It was not me.
And Professor Sharon, was he after you? He took over the Department of Jewish Studies.
Was this Moshe Sharon?
Yeah.
Oh, of course, we know him. I really didn't no idea what went on after that.
I think he came maybe after you left.
Must have done, yes.
And in the Mizrahi, did you know Solly Sachs?
Solly Sachs, of course I knew him. He was the one who arranged our transportation in and out of South Africa. And then, of course, I used to see him at Mizrahi functions, and when he was running things at Beit Meir. Yeah, of course. Is he still around?
Sure.
I heard he wasn't well or something.
He just had his 80th birthday.
80th? Yeah. He's a kid.
Very special.
Yeah.
I have a very close connection with Sonny.
Oh, that's nice. What, you lived in the same area?
No, we go back many years. He had his offices on the tall Colton Centre in the building on the 50th floor.
Yes.
With the mezuzah. He had offices there.
Yes. There was never. All I remember mainly of him, he was present at the airport when people were leaving, and he was there when we left, dealing with luggage or this, that, and the other. What?
And who else from the community were you close with in South Africa, in Johannesburg?
In Johannesburg, apart from the rabbi, there was the other rabbi at Greenside. He was a landsman of us from Liverpool. He and his wife. And I've forgotten what his name. What was his name? The rabbi of Greenside. They went to America, I think, later on. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, it was a very well-known family he came from. And
Rabbi Eloi, that are based in Rabbi Eloi?
I didn't really have much contact with him at all.
And Rav Kudstad? Moshe Kudstad?
What did he do?
He took over, he was the son-in-law of Rabbi Eloi.
No, I didn't have any contact with him. Don't remember the name. Did you follow up what happened to my successor in Germiston?
It was Rabbi Levi.
Yeah.
Rabbi Levi took over.
He had good qualifications, but he'd gone very, very right-wing.
So can I ask, the community in Germiston, because I took B'nai Kiv in Germiston, you had amazing families. There was the Greenblatt family.
Oh yes. Well, she was the one who was like the Madricha. And didn't she get engaged and married just to a boy from the area?
It's Michael Samuels who just passed away, but a lot of the children had made Aliyah from the Greenblatt family. And
we saw that.
I see his patient.
What about her?
The daughter,
No.
Gita is here.
Gita, I'm talking about Gita.
Gita, I was at the wedding. It's a very small community. It's a very small, but a very special community.
Yes, it had its own. I don't think any other community of its size had its own history written by.
It was a beautiful shul, a magnificent shul. Today,
is that building still in existence?
Today there's no Jews left. It's
no, but the building itself.
Maybe it's a relic of a building, but there's no community. It's all.
I know that. So why exactly was this? It wasn't just because I left. Well, there must have been some other reason.
But when you were the rabbi, when you were the official minister in Germiston, were you still involved with Jewish education in Johannesburg as well?
To some degree, I suppose. Must have been. Through the Board of Deputies. And at this time, no, there must have been some, I can't remember anything specific.
And you've got fond memories of your time in South Africa?
On the whole, yes. It was very good for our children. They grew up in a period of, I don't know what you could call it, it was a glorious period for them. They didn't see the harsher side of apartheid. They saw the side where blacks were servants and were beaming, and where there were treats and fun, and the annual trip to what was it called? Something Bay.
Plettenberg Bay?
Yes, that was probably, anyway. And the train that took them there and all that kind of thing. No. Our eldest son, Pinchas, the one who's now in his 50s, well, they're all in their 50s now. He's the oldest. He's the lawyer and businessman. He was always had this thing, partly inherited from me, of leading, running things and so forth.
Were they involved in B'nai Kiva?
To any extent that the age permitted, yes, I would have thought so. I can't remember specifically, but I think so. I don't know whether it's so, but Pinchas and Harry were always did everything together, and I may imagine that would have been it.
And what school did you send them to? There was a Hillel in Benoni?
No, they went to Menorah.
Oh, to
Rabbi Bernard's.
Yeah.
I drove them there and back every day.
Because it was also Yeshiva College at the time.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Bernard's his school was a bit more religious.
Yes, that I know. But they never got there. No, Menorah we were very happy with. They were very considerate about paying the fees and so on. But I can't remember ever being invited to speak there, though. That's interesting. No, I remember we got shocks when we moved from Germiston moved from Emerentia to Germiston. I think Yes, I think so. We, Walter Hess, with whom I was very close, went shopping around, and he found this house which was very well situated just off the main road within easy walking distance to the shul. And the owner was a Jew of a certain type. And he said that he would have invited us to supper, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you see. Anyhow, he said he'd look around, so I look around. I open the fridge, it's chock full of treif.
Oui.
I felt sick. I had never seen so much treif in one place. Goyish things. Then he said, "Would you like to stay for supper?" Anyway, we got that all cleaned up, and yeah, even Walter, I think, was a bit taken aback, and we started up from that point.
And Gavriel, why did you terminate your job there? How come you decided?
Look, I would have been ready to stay for one more year, and I think they would be very happy if I had done so. But Viva was very anxious because of the children and the education, so we should get back. We didn't want them to stop feeling that they were more South African than Israeli, because they spoke English with a South African accent and all this kind of thing. I was ready to stay on by myself for a year to finish something that I wanted to do, but then I thought to myself, it's ridiculous. I'm going to be living here by myself. So I gave way, as usual, and we all came back together.
And when you came back, what did you do?
When I came back, that was, I'm trying to think what led to what. No, I was still working, doing something, I think, with the encyclopedia. I can't remember exactly what. I started cultivating contacts in the Jerusalem Post and elsewhere and overseas. Started writing more, and then what happened?
Were you still associated with Hebrew University?
No, not really. I mean, there were people, yes, but not. There were people. I mean, were living in I'm trying to remember. What was that?
And Gavriel, when you came back, where did you stay? In which suburb in Yerushalayim?
I think we must have gone back initially to Beit HaKerem for a while, but then we saw it was getting Haredi, and the people that we knew were less and less.
In Beit Vegan or Beit
Vegan?
Beit Vegan.
Yeah. And there was a children's education to think about and all the rest of it.
Which street in Beit Vegan?
We lived on Uziel.
What number?
129, right at the end.
We in the very beginning?
Before the slope goes down, yeah.
And which shul did you go to in Beit Vegan?
I was a member of...
Beit Yehuda?
What?
There's a Mizrahi shul, Beit Yehuda?
Yeah, well, that's the one that I helped to found. And there were shlichim, ex-shlichim there. Kurztag was there, a lot of people who'd been on shlichut. And I enjoyed it. I served quite a long time as a sort of shamus, organizing aliyot, handing things out. But eventually, when people got involved in property and so forth, and leasing, so forth, And she was also involved in building in this building, creating this building. So she made sure that we got this apartment high up before anybody else started it. There was another family on the other side.
Ramat Beit HaKerem, when we came, didn't exist.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember what is now this whole area was covered in, slime, just
It was just
rocks.
land, rocks and
The part of it was used for Yom Ha'atzmaut. The army had a flattened out area where they could do a camp. That was all I remember.
And you've been very happy in Ramat Beit HaKerem?
Yes. The only thing is, because of the progress of years, there are less and less people that we know and have anything to do with, which is one of the reasons why we're moving. Because we've got no family here. We've very, very few friends left, and even those we don't see. We don't go to the same shul or something. Basically here, I've stopped going to shul here. And there is a minyan over the road, but it's not, it's very weird. I don't like, gave up going there. So altogether, it's where we are moving to is a bit even a bit closer to the shul that I've been going to ever since we started going there. With Bezalel and his family. We got Bezalel and his family, which is Bezalel. His wife is, I think I told you, he's the multimillionaire who used to deal with metals in Brazil.
And they live in Givat Shmuel.
Yeah. They've just built themselves a new place.
So Gavriel, you were the president of the Jewish Histological Society for many years, the society, the British...
Yeah. I took over after my predecessor passed away, and there was nobody else who was, particularly interested in taking over the job. So, well, I had the experience, so I did so. And I don't think people will say that I did any harm.
I think you did a most incredible job.
Anyway,
we're going to really miss you, because you've had incredible speakers, amazing speakers.
Yes.
And it was so well run, and it's been such an honour to attend the lectures.
Kenneth Collins
with the highest caliber of speakers.
Kenneth Collins had a lot of experience already from Scotland, where he was running things for similar groups there. So, I mean, he was a natural to take it. I groomed him to...
But I think you're going to miss it. You're going to miss...
yeah, well, obviously, every move you make, you leave something behind. But look, it's not like leaving the country. And it's only a bus ride from where we are living and will be living to central Jerusalem, and from there another bus ride to the Beit, what do we call it?
When you had, when Becca spoke about Marks and Spencer, so the granddaughters of Marks actually came.
Yes, they came.
You're right. It's not. It's a bus ride away.
Yeah. No, you never know who you're going to come across and who you're going to invite. Do you want...
So Gavriel, I'd like to ask you, you've had such an illustrious career, such an amazing career.
I would say interesting, not illustrious.
I would say very illustrious and very interesting and very fascinating. What message do you impart to your children and grandchildren and to the future generations?
I don't pretend to give them any advice apart from being loyal Jews. I think that they've all proved themselves, more than proved themselves in their own lives, with their own marriages, with their own children, with their own grandchildren, and that's more than made me happy. I believe in the least interference, and thank God I've never had to do so. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but politically, for example.
And Gavriel, what's happening in the country, do you have any thoughts or any advice? Or
I'll tell you, in some ways, it may sound funny, these days, look at the Knesset, it's all split up, but the majority of members are on the right. When we came in that year, it was unheard of. It was a Begin, was a distant threat. And it was run by Labour. Gradually that has changed for all sorts of reasons. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. Change comes and change brings all sorts of developments. I'm not very happy about the government has handled the business with the Fatah, Hamas and so forth. I think there was a mistake made, not only about neglecting the frontier, which was, I mean, it was disgraceful that there was these poor girls who were watching out and nobody took any notice of the warnings they were telling. I can't understand. Such people deserve, I would say, shoot them. I mean, they were virtually traitors. They behaved the country because they didn't do their job. And these poor girls, of course, naturally suffer the consequences. I think that the day after the events took place, we should already been bombing them. Bombing the hell out of them. We would have saved a lot of our lives and the world would have maybe reacted differently. But it's dragged on, and the longer the whole thing drags on, no matter what Netanyahu thinks and says, it gets worse for us.
But do you see a silver lining? Do you see...
Please God, there will be. Please God, somebody else will come. And there will be a new government coalition or whatever it is. And they will do what needs to be done. Which is not being done at the moment. I mean, I think back to, when I was a child, if it had not been for Churchill, I wouldn't be here. And it's the same thing goes, but I don't go by personalities, I go by policies. You've got
it must also hurt you a little bit to see what's happening in England.
Oh.
With how Jews feel threatened all over the world, and in South Africa to see how South Africa is turned against Israel as well.
Oh yeah, South Africa is one of the worst examples.
One of the worst, and you see in England as well, they just, on the day that 6 of our hostages we found out that they were executed, so England puts an arms embargo on the same day.
Yeah, it's stupid. And basically we've got a Labour government which is supposed to be much of an improvement. But these are, look, I'll tell you, from when I was at school, I was a Labour Party supporter. To me, the Conservatives were a lot of blue-blooded idiots who had no regard at all for the minorities, especially the Jews. It wasn't true, but that's the way I tended to feel. And but then comes the Labour government, and they make things even worse, especially on the Zionist issue. And I told you about the sergeants and this, that, and the other. And 6 of one, half a dozen the other. So today, I don't know whether if I were living in England, God forbid, would I vote for anybody? I don't know.
What is your advice for the Jews of England? For the Jewish community in England, what is your advice?
Get out.
You ready for this?
Yeah. I don't, look, I talk to my brother William, the retired rabbi, and I say to him, look, I read this is going on in northwest London, the people are daubing synagogues, are setting fire to this, somebody being attacked. So, well, you read about it, but you don't really. Now, I think this is his wife, actually, because she is absolutely enthralled with Britain. You couldn't find anyone more royalist, more patriotic than she is.
There's a lot of Jews that were very patriotic in Germany as well till the very end and didn't leave.
Yeah.
But please God, it won't be the same situation.
Well, unfortunately for them, they did not have a Kaiser. A Kaiser might have prevented a lot of things happening, but they didn't have it.
So Gavriel, I want to thank you again.
That's right. One of the things I held against the Republic.
No. If you can sit, Gavriel. It's just been such an honour and a privilege. And I have to ask you on a lighter note, coming from Liverpool, there's two very important questions. Did you ever get to meet the Beatles?
No.
And when you were in Hamburg?
We went to the same school but at different times.
But
2 or 3 of them. Yeah.
And what about, who do you prefer, Liverpool or Everton?
I was a Liverpool supporter, always been a Liverpool supporter, yes, right through. There was something about Everton I never liked. I don't know what it was. But it wasn't just because Liverpool was most successful, although Everton was the older club. I don't know. But it really doesn't matter what I think.
Well, Gavriel, I want to thank you so much. You just turned 90. Yeah. It was such an honor to be at your birthday party, and at Mayvestream in good health and Mazel and Bracha, and this has been such an honor and a privilege to be here today.
Well, thank you very much. I wasn't sure whether I'd get through it.
I think you were incredible.
I hope you're going to do some editing.
Every word is a gem, an absolute gem, really, and I'm so grateful to you.
What are you going to do with it?